On the day Ethan got his big break with a job in the city, he did something he'd never done before. He bought me a massive bag of imported chocolates. It must have cost him at least $50. Before the chocolate could even melt in my mouth, Ethan looked at me with a serious face. Only one a day, Lola. By the time you finish them, Serena and I will be back to get you. Terrified, I spat the chocolate out and grabbed his arm, begging him not to leave me behind. Ethan frowned, his eyes filled with pain. He whispered that his savings were only enough to get one person settled in the city. Serena was an orphan. He couldn't let her feel abandoned again. Ethan gently stroked my hair and made a promise. 1 year, Lola. I swear I'll come back, take you to the city, and get you the best doctors. But after they left, the whole town started whispering. They said Ethan took Serena to the city to live the high life, and that he had abandoned his useless, dumb sister for good. I didn't believe them. I sat by the dusty road entrance every single day, waiting. The local creeps in town started teasing me. They said if I agreed to marry one of them, Ethan would definitely come back to attend my wedding. When I screamed and said no, they beat me. I dragged myself home, bruised and crying. The pain was so bad that I couldn't help but eat 3 chocolates at once. I just wanted Ethan to come back faster. If he was here, he would protect me and punish them. Then, Chloe noticed my belly was growing bigger day by day. She gently touched my swollen stomach, her eyes filled with horror. Lola, you're pregnant. Who did this to you? My head throbbed with a blinding pain. I couldn't find the words to explain. Chloe held me tight and sobbed for hours. When Ethan finally got the news through a letter, his only reply was cold. If anyone in town is willing to take responsibility, just let Lola marry him. But I was already the town's joke, despised and tormented. I couldn't survive the brutal labor, and I died giving birth in a cold, dark room. When I opened my eyes again, I was still standing by the dusty road entrance, waiting for Ethan and Serena just like I did every day. The only difference was that those creeps didn't bother me anymore. They didn't even look at me. It was only when they gathered near the old gas station to smoke that I could hear their muffled laughter, and it sounded like they were talking about me. I drifted closer to listen. Lola was crazy, sure, but she was easily the prettiest girl in this godforsaken town. Lucky for us she was slow. Otherwise, her brother would have taken her to the city long ago. Yeah, and thank God Ethan wasn't here. She ended up dying in Luke's house anyway. As long as we keep our mouths shut, nobody can pin it on us. They rambled on, using words too complicated for my mind. But I understood one thing clearly. They said Ethan left me behind because he thought I was stupid. I puffed out my cheeks and yelled at them angrily. Ethan never thought I was stupid. He told me so. Just you wait. When Ethan comes back, I'm going to tell him everything. He will make you pay. When evening came, I walked past the desolate cemetery on the hill. I saw Chloe holding my old mason jar, looking busy. She took the remaining chocolates from the jar and placed them gently, one by one, on a small dirt mound next to my parents' tombstones. She even hammered a small wooden cross into the dirt, carefully carving the name, Lola Carter. I sat next to her and giggled. Chloe is the smartest and prettiest girl ever. Your handwriting is so beautiful. Now that my name is on it, no one will steal my chocolates, right? Chloe didn't answer me. She turned around and slowly poured a handful of grayish-white ashes into the empty mason jar. She begged Ned, a townsperson who was heading to the city for business, to deliver the jar to Ethan no matter what. My eyes went wide with excitement. You're going to see Ethan? Can I come this time? Chloe still didn't look at me. But at least she didn't stop me. Since you're quiet, I'll take that as a yes. I was thrilled. I skipped along behind Ned all the way to the city. Ned shoved the mason jar into Ethan's hands, muttered, "I'm so sorry for your loss," and hurried away. Ethan held the familiar jar, standing on the bustling city street, looking completely lost. I happily threw myself at him for a hug, but my body passed right through him. Serena, looking elegant and stylish, walked out of their apartment and asked softly, "What is it, Ethan?" Ethan frowned, staring at the jar in his hands. "Isn't this Lola's jar? That guy just told me he was sorry for my loss and ran off. Did something happen to Lola?" Since moving to the city, Serena had painted her nails a beautiful bright red, and she wore shiny silver bracelets on her wrists. She looked so pretty. She giggled and took the jar from his hands. "Ethan, you know how Lola is. She probably ate all the chocolates and begged Ned to bring her precious jar to you, just to trick you into buying her more. You can't keep spoiling her like this. Besides, she's about to be a mother. Too much sugar isn't good for the baby." Hearing her words, tears welled up in my eyes. I pointed at my flat stomach and screamed. "Ethan, I didn't. I saved the chocolates because I was scared you'd be mad. I put them back. And the baby is gone, Ethan, eating candy won't hurt anymore. I just missed you and Serena. I just wanted to see you." But Ethan didn't look at me. He couldn't hear a thing. He seemed to notice something and said, "The jar feels a bit heavy. Is there something inside?" In fact, Serena had already opened the jar when Ethan wasn't looking and saw the letter tucked inside. She shook her head smoothly. Nothing. Just some dirt. You know how she likes to collect random things. With that, she walked over to the corner of the yard and poured the gray ashes onto the soil beneath a tree, using it as fertilizer. The gray dust instantly buried the letter deep underground. Ethan sighed, looking a bit guilty. Do you think I was too hasty in letting Lola get married? Serena took Ethan's hand, her voice sweet and reassuring. Ethan, Lola had to grow up eventually. You couldn't protect her forever. Now that the knot is tied, making a scene will only ruin her reputation. Isn't it better for her to be married to a normal man than to live alone? Besides, Lola's mind is confused. It's only natural she made a mistake and got pregnant without knowing any better. The list of names in that old rumors letter was just gossip. There's no proof those men actually did anything. Why overthink it? If I hadn't stopped you last time, the whole town would know she got pregnant out of wedlock. That would have truly ruined her life. Ethan was silenced by her logic. He finally nodded, letting out a long breath. If I hadn't given her the wrong medication when we were kids, her brain wouldn't have burned up like that. She wouldn't be this way. I'm just terrified of her being hurt. Just then, a middle-aged man walked into the yard, looking cheerful. Ethan. The factory approved your family leave. Hurry up and head back. Go bring your sister to the city for her medical checkup. I followed Ethan all the way back to our small town. Those same creeps were still hanging out near the old gas station. I pointed at them and yelled to Ethan. They hit me. Ethan, they hit me. Sure enough, when those guys saw Ethan, they looked terrified and tried to scatter. But Ethan blocked their path. Instead of pulling out his fists, he reached into his bag and pulled out several family-sized bags of expensive chocolates. Lola's wedding was rushed, and I couldn't make it back in time to help, Ethan said, a polite smile on his face. I heard you all helped out at my brother-in-law's place on the wedding day. Thank you for your hard work. Take these. Consider it a thank you gift from me. He began handing out the chocolates to them one by one. My eyes turned red with anger. I tried to knock the chocolates out of his hands, but my fingers just passed through the air. Serena also smiled and helped hand them out. When only a few chocolates were left, Ethan gently stopped her. He whispered to Serena, Lola loves these. Let's save the rest to satisfy her sweet tooth. But I didn't want any chocolates. I pointed at those ugly faces, crying out my pain. Luke slapped me and tied me up with ropes. Zach and Wes stuffed rags in my mouth so I couldn't scream. They beat me every time I cried. They said if I didn't want to marry Luke, they would beat me until I did. Ethan, why aren't you protecting me anymore? I sobbed, staring at him, but he still wouldn't look at me. I was so frustrated that I scratched my arms, leaving deep red marks. In the past, if Ethan saw me scratch myself, he would cry from heartbreak. But now, he didn't even turn his head. Behind us, the creeps burst into mocking laughter. Wes, the leader, smirked and called out. Ethan, you've got some real patience. We respect that. Ethan frowned, not quite catching the sarcasm in his tone. Before he could ask, Serena pushed him toward our old house. Wes popped a chocolate into his mouth and stared at Ethan's back, muttering. Does Ethan really not know the crazy girl is dead? One of his lackeys sneered. Didn't Chloe send him a letter? He's probably just a coward. He sees there are more of us and doesn't dare to start a fight. Or maybe he wanted that useless sister dead anyway. She was just a burden. Look at that gorgeous girl Serena next to him. They aren't even blood related. If you were him, wouldn't you prefer her? Hearing their words, I forgot how to cry. So. Ethan was tired of me. I followed him home quietly, keeping my distance. When we pushed the door open, the house was a complete mess. The chicken coop was empty, with only a few feathers scattered on the ground. Ethan sighed. Lola really didn't listen to a word I said. But I did listen. I took care of the 5 chickens Ethan left behind, feeding them 3 times a day. They grew into big, fat hens and laid so many eggs. But Luke said that since he married me, everything in the house belonged to him. He said if I didn't let him take them, he would burn our house down. Before Mom died, she told me this house had to be kept for Ethan's future wedding. I didn't dare let him burn it. So I just huddled in the corner, watching Luke strip the house bare, not even daring to make a sound. Ethan, you guys are back? Chloe stood at the gate, her face deadly pale. Ethan hid his disappointment and forced a smile. Chloe, is Lola at her husband's place? Could you call her back for me? Tell her I'm not mad at her anymore. She doesn't need to hide. Chloe gripped the doorframe so hard her knuckles turned white. Her voice trembled violently. Ethan, did Ned not give you the mason jar? Lola, she died weeks ago. Chloe, Lola was slow, but how can you make up a sick joke like this? Serena interrupted, her face tight. Before Chloe could speak, Serena stepped forward, forced a stack of bills into Chloe's hand, and whispered sharply. If Lola doesn't want to come back tonight, that's fine. Take this money and give it to your father. Ask him to help us organize a town barbecue tomorrow. Since Lola got married, we should at least throw a nice reception for the town to make things right. Chloe opened her mouth, but looking at the money, she swallowed her words, gripped the bills, and walked away in silence. The next day, Chloe's family arrived. When they saw the backyard decorated with bright red roses and ribbons, they froze in shock. Chloe's father spoke with a stutter, his voice shaking with anger. "Ethan, is this party really for Lola?" Ethan, busy hanging up a red banner, smiled and nodded. "Yes. I wasn't here when she got married, and I felt terrible about it. Lola has her issues. As her family, we should pay for this reception to show our appreciation to her husband's family. It's the right thing to do." Before he could finish, Chloe's father began to tremble with rage. He threw the money hard onto the ground and turned on his heel. At the gate, he spat out bitterly. "Everyone in this town knows why Lola ended up the way she did. You went to the city and lost your damn mind, didn't you? Helping the Millers throw a party after what they did? You're going to burn in hell, Ethan Carter." With that, Chloe's family stormed off. Serena chased after them, grabbing Chloe's arm, demanding an explanation. Chloe pointed toward the cemetery on the hill, tears streaming down her face. "Lola is dead. Luke Miller tortured her to death. Both she and the baby are buried in the dirt right now. You didn't come back to protect her, you pushed her into that hellhole instead. And now that she's gone, you're helping the Millers celebrate. What kind of sick brother are you?" Serena stumbled back into the yard, her face white. Ethan was busy washing the grill. He muttered angrily, "I don't know what's wrong with that family. If they don't want the money, we'll find someone else to cater." Serena opened her mouth, trembling, but before she could speak, a loud commotion came from the front gate. It was a sound I knew all too well. "It's the bad guys from the gas station. They're here to steal our things again." I hid behind Ethan, but he stood up with a warm smile to welcome them. The man leading them was Luke Miller. With the other creeps cheering him on, Luke walked up to Ethan, acting meek, and muttered, "Long time no see." Ethan looked past him, searching for me. When he saw no one, disappointment flashed in his eyes. Is Lola still mad at me for coming back late? Is she refusing to see me? Realizing Ethan was completely in the dark, Luke's attitude changed instantly. Seeing more townspeople gathering, he pulled Serena out of the yard. Scared he would hurt her, I quickly followed them. Once out of Ethan's sight, Luke sneered and shoved his hand out. "Where is the monthly cash you promised? Pay up, or I'll tell Ethan that you are my biological sister, Serena Miller. Let's see if he still keeps you in his fancy city apartment after that." I froze. Serena's real brother was Luke, the monster who tormented me. Serena slapped his hand away in disgust. "You have the nerve to ask for money? Lola died weeks ago. How dare you keep that from me?" Luke scratched his head, looking bored. "You told me to marry her and keep her locked up in this town so she couldn't go to the city. You didn't say I couldn't touch her. Besides, she was weak. She died during labor after just a few times. Who knows whose bastard she was carrying anyway." Serena's body shook with pure rage. She slapped him hard across the face. "She was pregnant, you idiot. How could you treat her like that?" Enraged, Luke grabbed Serena by the throat, pinning her against the wall. "Other women survive pregnancy just fine. She was just fragile. She deserved to die. And who cares about the baby? They were both useless baggage." I screamed at him, begging him to let her go, but it was useless. Nobody could hear me. Luke growled a threat, telling Serena she had to pay him before she left for the city, or he would expose her. Just then, Ethan's cold voice rang out from behind them. "Luke. What the hell are you talking about?" Ethan's voice didn't sound like his own. It was a flat, hollow rasp that seemed to freeze the humid evening air. "Luke, what the hell are you talking about?" Luke froze. He slowly let go of Serena's throat, his face twisting from malice to a greasy, defensive smirk. Serena stumbled back against the rotting wooden fence, coughing violently, her hands clutching her neck. The beautiful silver bracelets on her wrists clinked together, a sharp, cheerful sound that felt entirely wrong in the heavy silence. "Ethan." Serena gasped, her voice thick with panic. She tried to rush toward him, but her legs gave out, and she sank to her knees in the dirt. "Ethan, don't listen to him. He's crazy. He's a liar. I don't even know who he is, he's trying to rob me." Luke let out a loud, mocking laugh. He wiped his mouth with the back of his dirty sleeve and stepped closer to Ethan, completely unafraid. To Luke, Ethan was just a soft, skinny city boy who worked in a clean office. "Oh, come off it, Serena," Luke sneered, spitting into the weeds. "Why are you still playing pretend? The gig is up. Tell your rich boy the truth." Ethan stood completely still. His eyes shifted from Luke's smug, scarred face to Serena's pale, trembling form. "Serena Miller," Ethan whispered, the words tasting like poison on his tongue. "You told me you were an orphan from the northern province. You told me you had no family left. I don't. Serena sobbed, crawling toward him, her beautiful red nails clawing at the gravel. He's not my family, Ethan. He's a monster. Please, you have to believe me. She's lying, Carter, Luke said, crossing his arms. She ran away to the city 5 years ago on a stolen bus ticket. Changed her name, got a fancy haircut, and pretended she didn't come from the muck. But blood is blood. When she found out you wanted to bring your half-wit sister to the city, she came crying to me. Ethan's breathing became shallow. What do you mean? She didn't want a drooling, brain-damaged mute ruining her perfect city life. Luke explained, taking a slow step forward, his eyes gleaming with sick pleasure. She knew that if Lola came to the city, you'd spend every cent on her doctors. There'd be no fancy clothes for Serena. No nice apartment. So, we made a deal. I took Lola off your hands. Serena paid me the down payment from your city savings, and I promised to keep the crazy girl locked up so tight she'd never see the light of day again. Every word Luke spoke felt like a heavy iron nail being driven directly into Ethan's skull. I stood right between them, waving my arms wildly. Ethan. He's telling the truth. He locked me in the dark room. It was so cold. Ethan. The water in the bucket turned to ice, and my toes hurt so much. Serena told him to do it. I saw her give him a big stack of blue bills before they left. But Ethan couldn't hear me. He just stood there, his face turning an ash gray color, his eyes staring blankly ahead. Lola. Ethan's voice cracked. He looked at Serena. The jar. The mason jar. Ned brought me the gray dust inside. Serena froze, her crying stopping instantly. She stared up at Ethan, her mouth hanging open, terror written in every line of her face. Luke laughed again, a harsh, grating sound. Oh, the ashes? Yeah, that's her. She's dead, Ethan. Died right on my floor. She was too stupid to understand how to push the baby out, and I wasn't about to waste money on a doctor for a broken-brained girl. Chloe took her bones after we burned her. I guess she wanted you to have a keepsake. She died? Ethan's voice was barely a whisper. Weeks ago, Luke said casually, as if talking about a stray dog. But hey, you still owe me the monthly allowance. Since my wife is dead, you gotta pay me the dowry compensation. Let's say $3,000, and we call it even. Otherwise, I'll let the whole town know you let your sister get ruined by a bunch of. Before Luke could finish his sentence, a strange, guttural sound tore out of Ethan's throat. It wasn't a human scream. It was the sound of a wounded animal, a raw, bleeding cry of pure agony. He lunged forward. Ethan wasn't a strong man, but the sheer force of his madness threw Luke off balance. They crashed into the dirt, Ethan's hands clawing desperately at Luke's throat, his fingers digging into the flesh with terrifying strength. I'll kill you. I'll kill you. Ethan shrieked, his face distorted with rage. Tears streaming down his cheeks, mixing with the dust. Get off me, you crazy bastard. Luke roared. Luke was built from years of brutal labor and tavern brawls. He threw a heavy fist directly into Ethan's temple. The blow landed with a sickening thud, and Ethan slumped to the side. But Ethan didn't stop. He scrambled back up like a demon, biting, scratching, throwing his entire body weight into Luke. Hearing the commotion, Wes and Zach ran out from the shadows near the gas station. Hey! Get off him! Wes yelled, kicking Ethan squarely in the ribs. Ethan gasped, the air knocked out of him, but he still tried to reach for Luke's throat. Zach grabbed Ethan by his hair, pulling his head back, while Luke got to his feet and began kicking Ethan in the stomach, over and over again. Stop! Stop hitting him! I screamed, throwing myself over Ethan's body. I tried to shield him, but the heavy leather boots just passed right through my ghostly chest, landing heavily on Ethan's ribs. He coughed up a thick spray of dark red blood, his body curling into a tight, protective ball. You think you're tough, city boy? Luke spat, wiping a scratch on his cheek. That was dripping blood. You're nothing. Your sister was a dog, and you're a dog. Luke, stop. The neighbors will see. Serena cried out, grabbing Luke's arm. She wasn't trying to save Ethan, she was looking around frantically, terrified that someone would call the police. Let's go. We have to get out of here. Luke kicked Ethan one last time in the head. Ethan's eyes rolled back, his body twitching slightly as he lay in the dirt, semi-conscious. Tonight, Serena, Luke warned, pointing a bloody finger at her face. Have the cash ready, or I'm going straight to the police station to tell them you planned the whole thing. I might go to jail, but you'll hang right next to me. The creeps scattered into the darkness, leaving behind only the smell of cheap tobacco and stale sweat. Serena stood in the middle of the yard, staring down at Ethan's broken body. She didn't kneel to check his pulse. She didn't cry for him. She just wiped the dust off her expensive skirt, turned around, and ran back toward our old house to pack her things. I knelt beside Ethan, my tears falling like silent, invisible rain onto his bruised face. Ethan, please get up. It's Lola. I'm right here. Don't go to sleep in the dirt, it's dirty. I tried to blow on his wounds, just like our mother used to do when we fell down as kids. But my breath was nothing but a cold draft, rustling the dead weeds beside his ear. Slowly, painfully, Ethan's fingers twitched. He let out a long, shuddering groan and rolled onto his side, spitting out a mouthful of blood and dirt. His ribs were broken, and one of his eyes was swollen shut, but he pushed himself up. He didn't look at the house. He didn't look for Serena. He turned his head toward the dark hill at the edge of town. The cemetery. The hill was steep, and the wind up there was always cold. Ethan crawled more than he walked. He fell 3 times, his knees scraping against the sharp gravel, his hands covered in deep cuts. But he didn't seem to feel the pain. He kept his eyes fixed on the small wooden cross silhouetted against the dark blue night sky. When he finally reached the small dirt mound next to our parents' headstones, he collapsed onto it. Lola, he whispered, his voice cracking into a sob. He touched the fresh, loose dirt. He saw the chocolates Chloe had placed there. They were already covered in dust, their bright wrappers dulled by the wind. Ethan began to dig. Ethan, no. Don't dig. I cried, trying to grab his wrists. It's dirty down there. I'm not in there anymore, I'm right here. But he couldn't hear me. He clawed at the dry, rocky soil with his bare fingers. The dirt got under his fingernails, tearing them back until they bled, but he didn't care. He dug like a madman, sobbing, a horrible, choked sound of pure, unadulterated agony. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Lola. I'm sorry. He remembered the day our parents died. He remembered the fever that took over my body when I was 7 years old. He had been so scared. The pharmacy was closed, and he had found an old bottle of medicine in the cabinet. He thought it would help. He didn't know the dose was too strong. He didn't know it would burn my brain, leaving me trapped in the mind of a child forever. I ruined you first, Ethan sobbed, his forehead pressed against the cold dirt, his hands covered in blood and earth. And then I left you to die. You didn't ruin me, Ethan, I said softly, sitting cross-legged next to him, trying to pat his back. I liked being small. You always gave me the big piece of bread. You always held my hand when we crossed the street. I was never mad at you. You're a bit late, Ethan. A quiet, cold voice broke through the darkness. Ethan froze. He slowly looked up, his one good eye bloodshot and wild. Chloe was standing at the edge of the cemetery, holding a rusty spade. Her face was pale, her eyes red from days of crying, but her expression was hard as stone. Chloe. Ethan gasped, his voice trembling. Tell me it's a lie. Please. Serena said Lola got married. She said Lola was happy. Chloe let out a cold, bitter laugh. Married? To Luke Miller? The biggest brute in this town? The man who beats his own dogs to death. She walked over and threw a crumpled, dirt-stained piece of paper at Ethan's feet. I went to the city, Chloe said, her voice shaking with rage. After Ned told me he delivered the jar, I couldn't sleep. I took the morning bus. I went to your fancy apartment. I found this in the backyard, buried under the tree where your precious Serena poured Lola's ashes. Ethan's breath hitched. With trembling, bloody hands, he picked up the paper. It was the letter. The letter I had dictated to Chloe when I was hiding in the cold cellar, my belly growing bigger every day, my body covered in bruises. Ethan unfolded the paper. The handwriting was Chloe's, beautiful and neat, but the words were mine. Ethan, I am writing this because my head hurts so much. Chloe is writing for me. I saved the chocolates. I only ate 3 when the bad men hit me, because I thought you would come back faster if I ate them. I didn't mean to be bad. The baby inside me is kicking. I don't know why it's there. Luke said it's because I was a bad girl. He said if I tell you, you will never come back. Ethan, it's very cold here. There is no coal. Luke took the chickens. I tried to protect them, but he said he would burn our house down. I didn't let him burn it. Because Mom said we have to keep it for your wedding. I miss you. I missed the city you talked about. Is it warm there? If I sleep now, will you be there when I wake up? Don't be mad at me. I was a good sister. I didn't tell anyone about the medicine. As Ethan read the last line, his body began to shake violently. I didn't tell anyone about the medicine. He had spent 15 years carrying the heavy guilt of what he had done to me, thinking it was his deepest, darkest secret. But I had known. Even with my broken, slow brain, I had remembered. I had known he was the one who gave me the wrong syrup, but I loved him so much that I promised myself I would never tell anyone, because I didn't want my big brother to get in trouble. And while I was dying in a freezing, dark room, tormented by monsters, my only thought was to keep his secret and protect his house. A sound tore out of Ethan's chest, a scream so loud and filled with agony that it seemed to shake the very leaves on the trees. He clutched the letter to his chest, rocking back and forth in the dirt, his blood soaking into the paper. Lola. Lola. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, he shrieked, his voice breaking, his body convulsing with grief. I sat next to him, my ghostly arms wrapped around his neck, my face pressed against his cheek. Ethan, don't cry. I'm right here. I'm not cold anymore. It's okay. I didn't tell. I was a good sister, right? But he couldn't feel me. He could only feel the cold wind and the crushing weight of a guilt that would never, ever leave him. Chloe stood above him, tears silently streaming down her face. She died in the dark, Ethan, Chloe whispered. She kept calling your name. Until her very last breath. She thought if she was good, you would come back and save her. But you never did. Ethan's screaming slowly died down into a silent, trembling shudder. He slowly stood up. The grief in his eyes didn't disappear, but something else took its place. Something cold, dark, and terrifyingly sharp. The warmth in his eyes was gone forever, replaced by a dead, hollow stare. He wiped the blood from his mouth with his sleeve. He looked at Chloe. Where is Luke? Ethan asked. His voice was completely flat, devoid of any human emotion. Chloe blinked, taken aback by the sudden, freezing change in his demeanor. He's at the tavern. With Wes, Zach, and the others. They're drinking, waiting for Serena to bring them the money. And Serena? She's at your house. She was packing her bags when I passed by. She wants to leave before you find out the truth. Ethan nodded slowly. He looked down at the wooden cross one last time, his hand gently brushing the dirt. Tell her I'm not mad, Ethan said softly. Go to the house, Chloe. Tell Serena. I understand why she did it. Tell her, we are going to throw the wedding reception tonight, just like she wanted. Tell her to invite Luke, Wes, and everyone else to our house. Tell them I have the money. Chloe frowned, a look of fear crossing her face. Ethan, what are you going to do? Ethan offered her a small, gentle smile. It was the same smile he used to give me when he promised to buy me candy, but his eyes remained completely dead. I'm going to give my sister the wedding feast she deserved, he whispered. And I'm going to thank everyone who helped. The old house was quiet when Ethan walked in. Serena was standing in the middle of the living room, two large suitcases sitting by her feet. When she saw Ethan, she flinched, her hand flying to her mouth. She looked at his bruised face, his bloodied hands, and the cold, empty look in his eyes. Ethan. She whispered, stepping back. I was just packing some things. I thought we should go back to the city tonight. The town, it's not safe. Ethan didn't look at her bags. He walked past her, his steps slow and steady, and sat down at the wooden table. You're right, Ethan said, his voice surprisingly calm. We should leave. But we can't leave like this. Serena blinked, confused. What? Luke told me everything, Ethan said, looking up at her. He told me you're his sister. Serena's heart stopped. She squeezed her eyes shut, waiting for the blows, the screaming, the rage. But none came. I understand why you did it, Ethan continued, his voice soft, almost tender. Lola was a heavy burden. You wanted a better life for us in the city. You knew I was too weak to leave her behind, so you made the choice for me. You did the hard thing to protect our future. Serena slowly opened her eyes. She looked at Ethan, trying to find any trace of deceit on his face. But he looked completely sincere, his eyes filled with a tired, desperate sort of love. Ethan, you aren't mad at me? She whispered, her voice trembling with hope. I was, Ethan said, standing up and walking over to her. He reached out and gently stroked her hair, his fingers leaving faint smudges of dirt on her cheek. But then I realized Lola is gone. Nothing can bring her back. And you are the only family I have left now. We have to look forward. Serena let out a loud, shuddering sob of relief and threw her arms around his waist. Oh, Ethan. Thank you. Thank you. I was so scared. I didn't want him to hurt her, I swear. I just wanted us to be happy. Over her shoulder, Ethan's eyes stared blankly at the wall. His hands, resting on her back, slowly clenched into fists, the knuckles turning white under the bloody bandages. We will be happy, Ethan whispered. But we can't let Luke blackmail us forever. If we run, he will follow us to the city. We need to settle this tonight. How? Serena asked, looking up at him, her face wet with tears. I have $5,000 in my city account, Ethan said. I've invited Luke, Wes, and the others to the house tonight. Chloe is going to bring them. We'll give them the money, have a drink, and make them sign a paper promising to never bother us again. Then, we leave for the city, and we never look back. Serena nodded eagerly. Yes. Yes, that's perfect. We'll give them the money and leave this horrible place forever. Ethan smiled. Go wash your face, Serena. Put on your prettiest dress. We have guests coming. As Serena hurried to the bathroom, I stood in front of Ethan, crying and shaking my head. Ethan, no. Don't trust her. She poured my ashes in the dirt. She didn't care about me. She's a bad person. But Ethan didn't look at me. He walked into the kitchen, his face hardening into a mask of pure ice. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out 4 small, dark glass bottles. I recognized those bottles instantly. It was the heavy, concentrated liquid sedative, the exact same medicine he had given me by mistake when we were children. He had gone to 3 different pharmacies in the neighboring towns to get them, using his old medical slips from his city job. Then, he pulled out the remaining bags of expensive, imported chocolates. With a small syringe he had bought, Ethan carefully, meticulously injected the thick, colorless liquid into each piece of chocolate. Lola loved these, Ethan whispered, a single tear escaping his cold eye and splashing onto a glossy wrapper. They should taste them too. All of them. Ethan, that medicine tastes bad, I said, leaning over his shoulder. It makes your tongue numb and your head burn. Don't give it to them. It hurts. But Ethan's hands were steady. The guilt that had weighed him down for 15 years had finally transformed into a cold, dark engine of retribution. By 9 o'clock, the old house was lit by the dim, flickering light of a few candles. Ethan had hung the red ribbons and roses in the living room, but in the dark, they looked like dried blood dripping from the ceiling. A loud, rowdy commotion came from the yard. The door was pushed open, and Luke walked in, followed by Wes, Zach, and 3 other town creeps. They were already half drunk, laughing and pushing each other. Well, look at this. Luke shouted, looking around the decorated room. The city boy actually threw a party for us. Welcome, Ethan said, standing near the table. He had washed his face and put on a clean shirt, though his hands were still heavily bandaged. Please, sit down. Luke threw himself onto our old wooden sofa, propping his dirty boots up on the coffee table. Wes and the others grabbed chairs, their eyes instantly darting to the thick envelope sitting in the middle of the table. Got the cash, Carter? Luke asked, his eyes gleaming with greed. It's all here, Ethan said, tapping the envelope. But first, let's have a drink. To celebrate my sister's marriage. And to thank you for taking care of her. Serena came out of the bedroom, wearing a beautiful red dress. She tried to smile, but her hands were shaking so hard she had to keep them hidden behind her back. Ethan poured cheap local liquor into several plastic cups. He slipped a heavy, concentrated dose of the liquid sedative into each cup, stirring it quickly before handing them out. And in the center of the table, on a beautiful silver plate, he placed the injected chocolates. For dessert, Ethan said gently. The finest chocolates from the city. Lola's favorite. Ah, classy. Wes laughed, grabbing a cup and taking a deep gulp. Cheap booze. But it burns good. Eat some chocolate, Ethan urged, pushing the plate toward Luke. Consider it a peace offering. I want us to leave on good terms. Luke sneered, but his greed won. He grabbed 3 chocolates and stuffed them into his mouth, chewing noisily. Not bad. Too sweet for me, but not bad. The others followed suit, grabbing the chocolates, laughing, and bragging about how they were going to spend the money Ethan was giving them. I sat on the windowsill, watching them. Within 10 minutes, the laughter in the room began to quiet down. Wes frowned, rubbing his temples. Hey, my tongue feels kind of numb. Is this booze expired or something? My chest. Zach muttered, his cup slipping from his hand and crashing to the floor, spilling the dark liquid onto the floorboards. It feels heavy. Luke tried to stand up, his face suddenly turning a strange, pale blue. Carter, what did you? His legs buckled beneath him. He crashed heavily into the coffee table, shattering the glass, and rolled onto the floor. He tried to push himself up, but his arms were completely limp, shaking violently before collapsing. Serena stood up, her eyes wide with terror. Ethan? What's wrong with them? Why? Are they falling? Ethan didn't answer. He walked slowly to the front door. He closed it. He slid the heavy wooden bar across the frame, locking it. Then, he took a thick, heavy iron chain from behind the door, wrapped it around the handles several times, and snapped a massive brass padlock shut. Ethan? Serena's voice rose in a panicked shriek. She ran to the door, grabbing his arm. Ethan, what are you doing? Open the door. Why did you lock it? Ethan turned to look at her. The gentle, loving expression was entirely gone. His face was like a mask carved from stone, his eyes cold and empty. I promised Lola I would protect her, Ethan said, his voice quiet, almost peaceful. I promised I would come back and get her the best doctors. But I was too late. So now, I'm going to make sure the people who hurt her get the same medicine. You poisoned them? Serena gasped, backing away, her hands flying to her mouth. It's the same medicine I gave Lola when we were kids, Ethan said, walking slowly toward Luke, who was convulsing on the floor, white foam bubbling at the corners of his mouth. The one that burned her brain. It paralyzes the muscles first. Then, it slowly stops the lungs. You feel every second of it, but you can't scream. You can't run. Just like Lola in that cold cellar. Ethan, please. Serena screamed, throwing herself at his feet, grabbing his knees. I loved you. I did it for us. I didn't know Luke would hurt her like that. I didn't know. Ethan looked down at her, his eyes devoid of any warmth. You poured her ashes under a tree, Serena, he said softly. You let her die in the dark so you could wear silver bracelets. He gently, firmly pushed her away. Luke was groaning, a wet, choking sound rising from his throat. His eyes were wide with a primal terror as he realized he couldn't move his legs or arms. He was completely trapped inside his own failing body. Wes and Zach were slumped against the wall, their eyes rolling back, their fingers twitching uselessly. Ethan walked to the corner of the room, where a large, heavy metal can of kerosene was sitting. He unscrewed the cap. Ethan. No. The house. I screamed, running to him, trying to grab the can. Mom said we have to keep the house. Don't burn it. It's our home. But Ethan didn't hear me. He began to pour the strong-smelling liquid over the sofa, over the floorboards, over the red ribbons and roses, and over Serena's suitcases. Ethan. Stop. Please. Serena shrieked, scrambling toward the locked door, clawing at the wood with her bare hands. Her beautiful red nails cracked and tore, leaving bloody streaks on the door, but the heavy iron chain didn't budge. Let me out. Let me out. Ethan walked back to the center of the room. He stood right next to Luke's twitching body. He pulled a small box of matches from his pocket. He struck one. The tiny yellow flame flared to life, illuminating the dark, terrifying room. Lola, Ethan whispered, looking directly at the windowsill where I was sitting. As if he could finally see me through the haze of his madness. I'm coming. I'm going to bring you the chocolates. He dropped the match. Whoosh. The kerosene caught instantly. A wall of bright, roaring orange fire erupted, racing across the floorboards, swallowing the sofa, and climbing up the wooden walls. Serena screamed, a high, piercing shriek of absolute terror as the flames licked at her red dress. Luke could only watch, paralyzed, his eyes wide with horror as the fire slowly crept toward his legs. He couldn't even scream, only a faint, bubbling gasp escaped his lips as the heat began to blister his skin. Ethan didn't try to run. He sat down on the burning floorboards, right in the center of the roaring inferno. He pulled the empty mason jar, the one that had held my ashes, close to his chest, hugging it tightly, and closed his eyes. Ethan. I cried, running into the middle of the flames. But the fire didn't burn me. I was already dead. I sat down next to him, wrapping my ghostly arms around his shoulders. The smoke was thick and black, filling the room, choking out the screams of the monsters, turning everything into a blinding, roaring white heat. As the smoke filled Ethan's lungs, his body relaxed. His breathing became slower, shallower, until finally, his heart stopped beating. And then, the roaring of the fire slowly faded into a quiet, peaceful silence. Ethan opened his eyes. He wasn't looking through me anymore. He was looking directly into my eyes. The bruises on his face were gone. The blood on his hands was gone. He looked young, healthy, and happy, just like the big brother who used to carry me on his shoulders through the green fields when we were kids. Lola, he whispered, his voice cracking with emotion. Ethan. I giggled, throwing my arms around his neck, holding him tight. This time, my hands didn't pass through him. I could feel his warm heart beating against my chest. I could feel his strong arms wrapping around me, holding me as if he would never let me go again. I'm so sorry, Lola, he sobbed into my hair. I'm so sorry. I left you. It's okay, Ethan, I said, wiping his tears with my hands. The bad men are gone now. The medicine doesn't hurt anymore. Look. I pointed toward the doorway of our burning house. The fire, the smoke, and the screaming monsters were gone. In their place was a beautiful, wide path of warm, golden light, stretching far beyond our small, dusty town, into a place where the sun was always shining and the air was always warm. And at the end of the path, our mom and dad were standing, smiling and waving at us. Let's go home, Ethan, I said, taking his hand. We don't need the city anymore. Ethan looked at the light, then down at me. A real, beautiful smile, the first one in 15 years, spread across his face. Yeah, he said softly, squeezing my hand tight. Let's go home. Hand in hand, we turned our backs on the dark town and walked into the warm, bright light, together forever.